We're having a little technical difficulties, but we're gonna pick it up through our microphone. Okay,
Check, check.
got it.
Jennifer, you're ready to go over there?
Yep.
Okay. So
Rube.
call me to order.
Rubing,
Here.
Marcus,
Here.
Roloff, Hankins,
Here.
McInnes,
Here.
Coons,
Here.
Calorito,
Here.
Powers.
Very good. I want to thank everybody for your attendance on the special meeting. We're between Ms. Vogler's vacation and my vacation, so thank you for your flexibility in being able to be here today. Item number 3 is review and approval of the agenda. So moved by Mr. McInnes, seconded by Ms. Roloff. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call?
Roloff,
Here.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
Yes.
Coons,
Yes.
Calorito,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Rubing,
Yes.
Marcus.
Yes. All right, item number 4, public comment. Any members of the general public that want to address the board of health? Hearing none and seeing me say no, we will move on to item number 5. And I put this on the agenda just to make sure that everybody on the board of health is up to speed on where we are with Mr. Thorell as our interim health officer. Dan, you want to just cover that real quick for the board?
Yeah, sure. I actually reached out because I was curious as well where things stand.
Let me preface your comments. I sent a letter along with Mr. Thorell's
Resume.
CV and your transcripts, I believe.
College transcripts.
Yeah, all of that was sent to the state, which covers our request to have you appointed as interim health officer.
Correct.
There you go.
Correct. And then, so what was not, which wasn't part of that package was there needed to be a letter from the Benzie District Health Department Board Chair. So once that was realized, that was sent down to the State Health Department last Thursday on the 10th. I talked to the Director of Local Health Services down there, Laura D. La Brambelge. Got it that time. And she said that basically it's a normally it's like a 2-week process and we're 6 days in. So but she did not anticipate any problems whatsoever.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions for Dan regarding that interim spot?
Do we need to negotiate a compensation package and all that?
I think once he is officially given the appointment, we probably need to discuss compensation for him, yes. In fact, Jennifer, if you want to put that on for the April meeting,
Okay.
hopefully by then we'll have heard from the state that your appointment is approved, and then we can discuss that at the April meeting.
Okay.
Is that good with the board, or do you want to have any further discussion about that now?
That's sensible, I think.
I do have a question regarding the materials that you send over. Is that going to be consistent with the employment of a permanent person with the same materials? So do we know now all the requirements, I'm using the word requirements, for a person in advance for the purpose of seeking a permanent placement?
I don't know that I don't know if there are different requirements for the interim spot as compared to a permanent
There is,
appointment.
yeah, there is. And for the permanent appointment, and it's all specified in the public health code, and yeah, we can get you those, requirements, qualification requirements easily. And it's pretty much spells it out. Number of years of experience, degrees in public health, basically master of public health, or, equivalent in a very related field, or if you're a medical doctor. So
Yeah. So
that's, general, I'm probably missing, a few items there, but, and I think there is a provision for like, someone with a bachelor's degree with X amount of years of experience, so.
Sure. Yeah, obviously the responsibility falls on us, so we should at least know those things. So I definitely want to see it. and make sure we check off the list what's important. So we don't
Right.
go after or pursue somebody and forgot that we wasted time because they didn't qualify.
Okay. Anything further for Mr. Thoreau? Okay. There's been a request from our civil counsel to go into closed session to review a written opinion. Ms. Vogler, is the purpose of the closed session to discuss a written opinion drafted by you?
It is.
Okay. I will then make a motion pursuant to MCL 15.268H of the Open Meetings Act and MCL 15.243G of the Freedom of Information Act to discuss a written opinion from civil counsel. Invited to the closed session are the board civil counsel, Ms. Kenny, all present board members, and civil counsels from Charlevoix, Antrim, and Otsego counties. I will note also that I had a conversation today with Mr. Reeves, the Emmett County Administrator. There apparently was some type of miscommunication or misunderstanding in a previous meeting, not a meeting of this board, about whether or not Emmett's civil counsel would be invited. I told Mr. Reeves today that their civil counsel is certainly invited, and I think he declined that invitation. So, having said that,
I'll support.
been moved by myself, seconded by Commissioner Rubin. Can we have go ahead.
Well, when I talked beforehand, I feel sandbagged. I guess Mike's okay with this, but, so 3 counties have legal representation and Emmett, all of which have their own unique issues. We don't have anybody, it's just us, and I'm not particularly thrilled about that. I mean, has this been known for a few days that attorneys were invited into this thing?
Mr. Hankins,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interject. It strikes me that having counsel for 3 out of the 4 counties raises an issue of the attorney-client privilege and confidentialities that go along with a closed session and a discussion of this nature. Had I been advised beforehand that Mr. Hyder Kazim, who I see here and I'm familiar with, was going to be asked to be part of the closed session, I would have done the appropriate research to determine whether or not his inclusion would in fact violate the attorney-client privilege on behalf of Emmett County, or any of the other counties as far as that goes. And this board in this health department has its own separate and distinct attorney-client privilege. That by including even corporate counsel, Mr. Jarima and or Mr. Kazim, would violate that privilege of this health department. The only way that you, in my opinion, can invite corporate counsel from 1 or more of the counties into a closed session is for a vote of this board by 2/3 to waive the attorney-client privilege, something I would not recommend.
Mr. Marcus.
Regardless of the discussion part of this, I am curious about one thing. We have a posted meeting. We have the information in front of us regarding what we're going to go into closed session for. We do have the ability to come out of closed session on that topic and resume under the same topic with different people. We can do that.
What do you propose?
In other words, we go into closed session with the people we know are here. We gather the information we know. We come out of it. We have the right to go back into closed session with different people.
Are you
With
suggesting?
the knowledge that we gain, but without the information being given out. In other words, the initial information being presented to us is still under that privilege.
But the 2 individuals in the back are not members of the Board of Health, and they're not.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm just not going to.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
want to make sure you understand where I'm going
Yeah, I do.
before we have a discussion, because if the client privilege has been, that the attorney-client privilege has been disrupted, then fine, then we can just collect the data, collect the information we got through that attorney privilege. We come out of closed session, we go back into another closed session where it's outlined what we are, because we'll know what we can and cannot talk about in the first closed session. And then we can have another discussion afterwards with all councils.
Again, if I may interject. So the way that this should happen and maintain the attorney-client privilege of each of the 4 counties that make up this board. And again, the privilege is held by the health department and or this board of health. It's much like a corporation, right? Corporation has a board and it has employees, and all those employees have to maintain the attorney-client privilege when they talk to the lawyer of the corporation. Same with this board. If in fact the corporate counsel from any of the counties is invited, that you just waived that privilege. And the only way, in my opinion, you can waive that privilege is a 2/3 vote of this board. Now, let me also say this, the appropriate way to do this, if the counties want participation, is by and through their individual board members. Meaning, once we have a closed session and the legal memo is reviewed, if action is to be taken, we of course come out of closed session and vote on that action. If the members of the individual counties want to go back to their corporate counsel with the recommendations that may or may not be included in my legal memo, they can talk to their corporate counsel and maintain their own attorney-client privilege and not subject the attorney-client privilege of this board and this health department to waiver.
That would put Emmett County on equal footing then, I think, too, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
Emmett County had the opportunity.
Yes.
Emmett County had the
My
opportunity.
understanding is Emmett County had an hour-and-a-half notice.
No, that occurred at 1 o'clock today when I spoke. It's actually before 1 o'clock.
And when did Charlotte County know that they were going to have an attorney?
My understanding was the meeting took place on March 7th, when everybody's board chairs and county administrators were present. And that's when this was arranged.
That's not my understanding.
Okay, well,
And let me make one other point that may have not been thought about here. So I believe I heard you say, Mr. Chairman, that Mr. Kazim represents.
Antrim and Otsego counties.
Okay. So let's say for the sake of discussion, there may be a conflict of interest between the monetary contributions of each of the county to the operations of the health department and how those monetary contributions may play out in the subject matter of our discussion in closed session. So what I think the board needs to recognize is that the positions of all 4 counties may not be consistent, and they may be in fact in conflict with one another, which means waiving the attorney-client privilege is just not an option for today's meeting. It is not. Had I been advised, I would have been able to prepare a memo and have a discussion with you, Mr. Chairman, about the concerns and potential conflicts and the waiver of the attorney-client privilege.
I don't see, first of all, if Mr. Kazim has a conflict between those 2 counties, that's something that those 2 counties and their civil council need to address, not this board of health. I was just in a closed session meeting, actually in Emmett County for 911, and the board chair had the right there to invite the persons that he wanted to into that closed session meeting. I don't believe that is inconsistent with our rules of operation. And given that 3 of the 4 counties who have a potential financial responsibility here have their civil council present, I don't see a problem with us moving forward. They would certainly be bound by any attorney-client privilege that that would come out of that closed session meeting as well.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this question related to that, unless you're not finished.
No, go ahead.
So in this closed session, and afterwards, you can talk to John Jarima. He was in the meeting. You can get legal advice from John Jarima.
That's right.
Who can I go to after this closed session?
Attorney should show up.
That's,
Or
that
you
was,
should have been, you should have been informed that we were gonna do this.
Yeah, I can't be a party to this entity's waiver. So if you're asking me to go into closed session as general counsel or civil counsel for this entity and subject the interests of this entity to a waiver of the attorney-client privilege, I can't go along with that. It's inconsistent with the law and it's not in the best interest of this body.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Marcus.
You think we can get a 5-minute break?
For what?
We can take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what purpose that will serve, but, yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Counsel, so that I'll misstate that.
Yes, sir.
Can you state that to me?
In my opinion, there's a conservative and correct way to approach this and an incorrect way to approach this. The conservative and correct way to approach this is that we go into closed session to deal with what we're all here today to talk about and deal with. And then is recommended and or potentially agreed upon each one of the members of this Board of Health who represent 4 different counties go back to their own respective county council and discuss in confidence, in that confidential relationship, what was contemplated with no vote, right? No vote. We come back out of closed session, no vote. Then if there's recommendations or concerns that come back from respective county council to the individual board members, then that can be shared in a subsequent meeting and or subsequent closed session. That's the conservative and correct way to maintain the attorney-client privilege for this public body.
Who would be in the closed session?
Myself, Dan Thorell, Jen Kenny is to take minutes of the meeting. Michigan law is clear on this issue. When you go into closed session, you're supposed to keep it as narrow, the people in the room as narrow as possible. Only necessary parties should be in the room in closed session to effectuate the work to be done by that public body. All right? So again, if I had been advised that this was being contemplated, I could have presented the appropriate law to everyone sitting here, including corporate counsel for Charlevoix and Antrim and Otsego. But I wasn't given that opportunity. And anyway, that's what needs to happen here to avoid waiving the attorney-client privilege by this public body. And I can't emphasize strongly enough how that would be very ill-advised.
Mr. Chair, can
Mr. Marcus.
there is a problem with what you think can be done, and that is we are bound not to discuss our what we go through in a closed session. It means I can't go to my board of commissioners and tell them everything I learned in closed session. It also means I can't tell anybody else. So you're not right when you tell us that I can go talk to my counsel about what we happened in this thing, unless some sort of legal action takes place to my county. Now he's representing my county. So there's a little gray area there that you're painting a picture on there. And I'm going to stand firm with the request, because in our last meeting, not everybody in our last closed session was required. And I will just leave it at that we had a closed session that at that particular time, there was invited people that weren't required. I'm going to say this today that now there is. And we serve it, the council serves for the board, and we have a right to invite anybody that is relevant. In this particular case, council's relevant. So I hope you stand firm on our request from my county to have a civil council present.
For your county.
I just said that.
So we had a motion. It was supported.
And we're not waiving anything.
Scott, I just want to make it clear once again, the individuals in the back of the room are not members of the Board of Health. They are not legal counsel to the Board of Health.
Well, neither is Mr. Thorell.
Fine, tell Mr. Thorell he can't come in.
Okay, we also have legal counsel for the Board of Health that just gave us a legal opinion. And it sounds like you guys are about to ignore it, and Mr. Marcus, I'm not aware that you're a licensed attorney in Michigan, so I'm a little leery taking your legal advice over our legal counsel. I think it's risky, I think it's imprudent, and I think it's a bad idea.
All right. So we had a motion that was supported. I'm inclined to withdraw my motion. And I'm going to make a motion, well, I don't know if we need to, do we need to vote on that motion and support council?
If your motion included members that I've now advised or participants in the closed session that I've now advised would risk waiving the attorney-client privilege of this public body, yes, the motion needs to be withdrawn and restated.
I'm withdrawing that motion then.
We are not waiving our privilege.
The motion that I made, we're not gonna vote on that. I'm gonna withdraw it. Okay, so I'm withdrawing that motion. I understand your concern, Mr. Marcus, and I think we can agree to go into a closed session, discuss what we're going to discuss, take a brief recess from that without taking any votes, and reconvene that closed session if we need to.
You can't vote in the closed session, I mean, that's a given.
Correct. Correct.
Can I
So who would attend this?
clarify what
Go
you
to
just
closed
said?
session.
Because that makes sense.
I'm going to follow Ms. Vogler's advice and ask that all council remain present. If we need to take a brief recess from that closed session, we can do so. We can consult with our attorneys if we need to. Then we can resume.
Can I ask you for the attention you're talking to your counsel with afterwards? Because we can't talk to our counsel, right, about what took place. So what good is it to talk to your counsel about something we're not supposed to share with them?
Okay.
That's why
we have a
everybody
couple of
present.
other options. We have
They
a
need to
couple
be
of
present. We're not waiving anything by inviting other people into it. It's not a waiving. No matter what anybody says.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
I would like to hear Antrim County's thoughts on where we should go from here.
That's out of order. We have an attorney.
It's not on our agenda.
Okay. The motion has been withdrawn.
May I interrupt briefly? I did get a message from Mike Reeves that would like Charlie or Matt to call them immediately. So could we take another recess so you have a chance to call?
We'll recess at 5:02.
Okay. Did you not find any?
No, I did find water.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to get more water.
I should have brought water. I thought about myself and nobody else.
clarified some information that we had already.
Yeah, we talked to our administrator as it was requested.
Okay,
Good information.
okay.
And are you going to impart his thoughts or opinions? There must have been some reason why.
Nope, I don't
Okay,
think we need to at this point.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, at least I'll. Right up again.
well, I think that is, yes. Yes. I think it's still beneficial for us as a board to meet with Ms. Vogler. So I'm going to make the motion pursuant to MCL 15.268H of the Open Meetings Act and MCL 15.243G of the Freedom of Information Act to discuss a written opinion from our civil counsel, Ms. Vogler. That closed session will include active board members, Ms. Vogler, and Ms. Kenny.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Coons, moved by myself. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Do you want me to do a roll?
Yes, let's do a roll.
Okay. Okay, going into closed session. Rubing,
No.
Marcus,
No.
Roloff,
Yes.
Hankins,
Yes.
McInnes,
Yes?
Kuntz,
Yes.
Palorito,
No.
Powers.
Four, the motion fails. What is the pleasure of the board? Would you like to reschedule when everybody's attorneys have been properly invited to the meeting, or, and I'm not suggesting that they haven't been, because they have. What's the pleasure of the board on this issue?
I think we need to reschedule if we're not going to have this closed session as we had planned. And,
We could have this meeting in an open public meeting, but I think all the attorneys present would say no.
I think, Scott, and I think the problem is, Lisa has given us advice. I'm not inclined to ask other attorneys tonight, but I think the point that she has been making, if I understand it, is that we can't bring third parties into the room. I mean, even if they are attorneys, I'm not clear how that works. I've never seen that where you just bring in other people.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pellerito.
I don't know about what happens in Emmett County. We do closed session many times. We invite sheriff, we invite whoever may be necessary, and then the attorney-client privilege applies to them as well, where they're not allowed to discuss. But as far as civil counsel, I'm sorry that yours didn't show up, but
It's not that simple.
I'm sorry, but that was what was happening, so. This is open to whoever we invite, and then they fall under attorney.
Well, could you invite, say, for example, a third county commissioner?
We did that earlier today. We had an alternate board member at 911 who stayed in the meeting today.
Okay.
So yes, alternate members, I believe it's at the chairman's discretion on who can be invited.
I will say that if we, I think there's a certain risk in ignoring civil counsel's counsel. If the council has provided us guidance, which we say we're going to ignore, I would have to presume that there are ramifications to that.
And let me make one other statement. I mentioned a conflict, right, between the respective positions of the counties. So how would it not be number one, overall waiver of the attorney-client privilege, much like responding to the FOIA that was sent by Mr. Jarima and redacting the attorney invoices for protected communications between the attorneys for this public body and a third party. So number one, by inviting third parties into the meeting, regardless of their representation of the county, they don't represent this board. And secondly, if in fact Emmett County's position on what we were here to discuss today is different from Antrim's or different from Otsiko's, how is that not a conflict between the attorneys as corporate counsel for the respective counties? So now you've not only set the stage where you've got a potential waiver, but you've pitted the counties against each other by and through their respective counsel by participating in a closed session. So we were here today to accomplish what I thought and still believe is in the best interest of the health department. And the only way to do that is to maintain the confidentialities that go along with the advice of counsel who works and is duty bound for this health department and this board.
Mr. Marcus?
We have to go to 2/3 vote to go into closed session, correct? That's what it is, going to be 2/3 majority vote.
I
So-
think it was 2/3 majority vote if we were going to,
I think the way it's written, by law, it's supposed to be a 2/3 majority vote to go into closed session. That's typical, right?
I believe you are correct. I can tell you in a minute.
So when you violate attorney privilege, client privilege, you are letting it out to the public, to everybody else to see. That's a violation. When you have invited guests, or you have invited people into that meeting, they become part of they become bound to that law as well.
I'm only.
It's not a violation.
Legal advice of an attorney and not somebody who's.
I appreciate that, sir. But I'm just telling you what I know. And
Well,
I'm gonna speak my mind, and if it doesn't work, then that's the way it is. But I'm telling you right now that, it's only a violation when you give it to the public, but it's no different than me having an employee of the health board in my meeting in a closed session, which we've done. An employee who's not a member of the board or employees.
I think our legal counsel just explained how it's different.
No, it didn't. It overshadowed the employee part.
it was a split vote. We're done.
I'm just explaining.
okay, gentlemen, we're not
Technically, it can be brought back up for
hold
vote.
on, we're calling meeting back to order. We're not gonna talk over each other. We're not gonna have an argument. We had a vote that failed to go into closed session. It was 4-4. I'm not sure what steps we should take next. If we should reschedule this meeting for the first part of April. My own personal desire is to take care of this issue, which I believe we can do, but I can't.
Your motion was the most sensible thing to do, Scott.
Well, I appreciate that, Matt, but half of the board disagrees. So, having said that, that motion failed for closed session. Is there any further discussion on this issue right now from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just thinking about all this, what's going on. And what's really holding this meeting up is because the other two gentlemen, or ladies, whatever, wasn't invited to come to this meeting. And that's what's really banging our head up against the wall, I do believe.
Well,
Now, wait a minute, I'm not done. Now, I think if we just really think about it, and go back and say, okay, let's be fair and square to everybody. Let's take Emmett, we take Charlevoix, Otsego, and Antrim, and let's do what we should have done in the beginning. We should have invited everybody's attorney. If you're gonna invite one, you're gonna invite four. That's all there is to it. And let's give this another try. Let's don't just sit here and go around in circles, which we're doing, and going absolutely nowhere.
Shirley, I don't think your understanding of it is accurate, in that on March 7th, the board chairs and county administrators had a meeting regarding the direction of the health department. And at that meeting on March 7th, there was a discussion about having our attorneys be present. Earlier today, I spoke with Mr. Reeves, who asked me about that as well, and I said there must have been miscommunication at some point. I don't know who, I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't know what all of the conversations were. But I advised Mr. Reeves today that if he wanted to have his civil counsel present, and that was prior to 1 o'clock when we started our 911 meeting, he opted to not do that.
That's not true. He didn't opt not to do it. He didn't have time to arrange it.
That makes
That's a
big
different thing.
difference.
If you do.
He was at that March 7th
Yeah,
meeting as
his
well.
understanding, I'm not gonna put words in his mouth.
Okay,
His
so
understanding was he knew that that was determined to happen when he talked to you today.
when we talked about
So,
something.
Regardless, you said it was a miscommunication, and I think that's what was had. We're not accusing anybody of anything. I think it was a miscommunication.
Okay,
And that's why it's the most sensible thing at this point, to get this closed session information that we need in the closed session that we all plan to have, that I plan to have until I heard Mr. Reeves at 3:30 today. And so I think that we need to reconsider your motion, get the closed session information with the people that need to be in the closed session, which is us and our attorney. Let's take care of it.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Please. I don't know if this is even possible, but I thought of it and it's worth asking. Can the board vote to have the chair and the attorney meet and get the information? I don't know how it would be a benefit, but I'm wondering if it would be beneficial for you to at least get the information yourself as a chairperson of the board.
I'm not comfortable with that without everybody.
I mean, you'd be bound,
Yeah,
but I'm just curious. Is it, first of all, I want to know if it can be done, whether or not it's voted on is another thing. I don't see why it couldn't be voted on.
Why can't you start from day one? Let's start all over. I mean, we're going absolutely nowhere here. So let's say, okay, let's start all over again and get this dang thing moving.
I think our board can benefit from having the chair have the information and help guide us without having further explanation about moving forward.
The attorney has just given us her opinion.
Ms. Vogler, in her infinite wisdom, gave me the Robert's Rules of Order for Dummies. Actually, it's Robert's Rules of Order Quick Study. So I want to briefly look at motions and reconsideration of a motion. And counsel, if you have the shorter version of this, please.
You know, I didn't, based on the agenda, I didn't anticipate having my plethora of Robert's Rules guidelines handy, so.
Can we reconsider a motion that was voted on and failed in the same meeting?
I don't believe if it's a tie, I don't believe that you have anything.
Yeah, the only person who can bring it back is if somebody who's in the majority, and there was no majority.
Right. Thank you, Mr. McGinnis.
Okay.
I learned that from
And while you're considering that, let me say one more thing. So the purpose under the Public Health Code for this board to exist is to function in the best interests of the health department, to do the business of the health department. The purpose of this board under the Public Health Code is not for the members from the respective counties to solely function in the best interest of their respective counties. There is an oath to serve the health department. So we are here to do the business of the health department.
I agree. Can I ask you a question on that one? Is there a potential that the counties could have a financial liability as a result?
I would be willing to answer that question in closed session.
See, it's just all the more reason why this is ridiculous that we don't have our council president.
Your council,
Our council, our council.
right here.
And I say that because I believe it's in the best interest of the health department for the matters that we're here today to talk about to be done pursuant to the legal opinion that I have drafted and prepared for today.
Okay, if I understand council's position accurately, we can't consider a motion to go into closed session at this point because it's been voted down. So, having said that, I appreciate everyone's willingness to be here, but I'm going to suggest that we reschedule. For Tuesday, April 5th, which I believe would be our regularly scheduled meeting
Right.
That's correct.
at 4:30.
Okay.
In these same chambers.
Good idea.
Any further input from the board regarding the meeting being rescheduled?
Quick question about it. So just, I'd like a legal opinion on this. So if Emmett County were to bring legal representation to this Board of Health, how does that affect? What if everybody comes with their attorneys, what's going to happen? That's, I guess.
You know, everything that I've said
Yeah.
still stands from my perspective until such
Okay.
time as I look into it and research it further. But
Okay.
again, one thing that's weighing on my mind, in addition to a waiver of the health department's attorney-client privilege, is also the potential for conflict between the positions of the respective counties and how that potential for conflict would serve the best interests of the health department as a whole. So that causes me to pause and grave concern.
So as our legal counsel, how would you recommend we handle that situation? What would be the best situation?
Well, I think that to the extent that this meeting took place between the chairman of the respective counties in regard to the health department, I think that you all need to go back to, your administrators and or your corporate counsel and discuss what's happened here today and how they might react to that. But, I will do what I believe I need to do to protect the best interests of the health department, plain and simple.
So our next regularly scheduled meeting is April 5th, 2022 at 4:30 in the afternoon, when we can revisit a potential closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I have a hearing in Benzie County that afternoon. I believe I can make it here probably by 5, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. If the closed session goes on the agenda, that it be put towards the end, so there's no conflict with my ability to make it here. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am,
I have something I'd like to say.
please.
We have discussed this for about an hour, about client attorney privilege and the importance of having everything that's said in closed session stay in closed session. That did not happen the last time that we were in closed session. Someone gave information either to Lisa Peacock or to her attorney. I don't believe I was the only person who received a letter from her attorney. And much of what was in that attorney was verbatim what we had in closed session. What does it do to go into closed session if we have people who are going to leave closed session and spread that information? What good does it do? Lisa, I believe that's the communication I had with you when you were on vacation, when I said I was venting because I was so angry that someone on the board had given out all of that information.
And I went back and reviewed the email, and I wasn't sure what in particular may have been disclosed, but I'd be happy to talk to you about that. And we can see if we can isolate who may have, disclosed that information and call that to their attention. I mean, the attorney-client privilege, as I mentioned earlier, is not held just by one person on this board or one person at the health department. It is a privilege that belongs to the body itself, inclusive of the members of this Board of Health, as well as the individual employees. So having an opportunity to emphasize in this context, post-resignation of the health officer, the attorney-client privilege is a productive discussion that I think we've had today. And there are individual members who I have already emphasized the importance of the attorney-client privilege, particularly in conjunction with the FOIA requests from Charlevoix County. All right. I mean, neither one of the employees nor one of the board members nor the attorney can waive that privilege for this public body. No single individual can waive that privilege. If there's been a breach that needs to be addressed, and everyone needs to understand the importance of maintaining the privilege. I appreciate your insight on that, Julian. I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is public comment. I'm going to check in the hallway to see if there's any members of the general public present.
Please.
Do I start handing out the chocolate?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I'm at my max for candy today. Thank you.
We need something to sweeten us up.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I look at it as both caffeine
You can have
and
all this
serotonin. Yep.
Two good things. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. We're at the point on our agenda rather, for item number 7, public comment. The only member of the general public who is present again would be Charlevoix County's HR Director, Lee. I can't remember your last name.
Okay, required.
Required. Be required. Do you have any public comment you want to direct to this board? Okay. I will take a motion to
Move.
Moved by Mr. McGinnis.
I presume you were going to say move to adjourn. I just leaked in there.
Yes. I'm moving to adjourn. Mr. McGinnis made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Palomino. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.